Keanu Reeves sat in the back seat of a black car, staring out the window. The city passed by in a blur. Tall buildings, busy streets, and flashing lights. But today, he wasn't going to a movie set or a fancy event. Today, he was visiting a small orphanage on the outskirts of town. He had heard about the place from a friend. It was home to children who had lost their parents, kids who had no family to take care of them. The orphanage struggled with money, and the children had very few toys or books. Something about their story had touched Keanu's heart. He wanted to go, not as a celebrity, but as a simple visitor who cared. The car stopped in front of a quiet building with faded white walls and a rusty gate. The orphanage looked old but warm. A few children played outside, their laughter filling the air. As Keanu stepped out of the car, some of them stopped and stared. "Is that?" a boy whispered to his friend, eyes wide. Keanu smiled and waved. He wasn't sure if they recognized him, but it didn't matter. He was here to spend time with them. A kind-looking woman in her 50s walked toward him. She wore a simple dress and had gentle eyes. "Mr. Reeves," she said, looking surprised. "We didn't expect you." Keanu nodded. "I hope that's okay. I just wanted to visit." The woman's face lit up. "Of course. The children will be so happy." She introduced herself as Miss Clara, the head of the orphanage. As they stepped inside, the smell of fresh bread filled the air. The walls were covered with colorful drawings made by the children. Some of the kids peeked around the corner, giggling and whispering. Keanu bent down and smiled at them. "Hey there," he said. "What are you playing?" A little girl with curly hair stepped forward, holding a worn-out teddy bear. "We're playing school," she said shyly. "I'm the teacher." Keanu grinned. "That sounds fun. Can I be a student?" The girl giggled and nodded. The other children gathered around, excitement growing. Soon, Keanu was sitting on a tiny chair, listening as the teacher asked questions. He played along, pretending to get answers wrong on purpose, making the children laugh. After their game, Keanu helped serve lunch. The food was simple: rice, soup, and a piece of bread. But the children ate happily. As he handed out plates, he noticed something on the wall. It was an old photograph, slightly faded. It showed a young boy, around 10 years old, with big bright eyes. The boy's smile was full of life. Something about the picture made Keanu pause. Miss Clara noticed him staring. "That's Daniel," she said softly. Keanu turned to her. "Who is he?" Miss Clara's smile faded slightly. "He was one of our children," she said. "He was adopted a while ago, but—" She hesitated. Keanu sensed there was more to the story. He glanced back at the photo, feeling a strange connection to the boy. Something told him that this visit was about to become more meaningful than he had expected. Keanu Reeves kept looking at the photograph on the wall. The boy's eyes seemed full of life, but there was something about his smile that made Keanu feel both warm and sad at the same time. He turned to Miss Clara. "What happened to him?" he asked gently. Miss Clara sighed, her face softening with emotion. "His name was Daniel. He lived here for many years. He was a special boy, kind, full of dreams, and always trying to make others smile. He loved movies, especially yours." Keanu's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Really?" She nodded. "Oh yes, he used to run around pretending to be a hero, just like in your movies. He would say, 'One day, I'm going to meet Keanu Reeves and tell him he's my favorite actor.'" Keanu felt a lump in his throat. He had met many fans before, but there was something different about this. He could almost picture little Daniel running through these very halls, dreaming of meeting him. "What happened to him?" Keanu asked softly. Miss Clara hesitated for a moment, then continued. "A family adopted him about 2 years ago. He was so happy. He finally had a home, a mother and father. But—" She paused, taking a deep breath. "Daniel had a serious illness. He fought hard, but he didn't have much time left. He passed away a few months after being adopted." Keanu's chest tightened. He glanced back at the picture, his heart heavy. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Clara gave a sad smile. "His parents sent us this photo after he passed. They said he never stopped talking about this place. He loved the children here like family." Keanu swallowed hard. He had come to the orphanage thinking he would spend a nice afternoon with the kids. But now he felt something deeper, something personal. "Did he ever try to reach out?" he asked. "Did he write to me?" Miss Clara's eyes widened. "Actually, yes. He wrote letters to you all the time. But we never sent them because we didn't know how to reach you. After he passed, we kept them in a box." Keanu's heart pounded. "Can I see them?" Miss Clara nodded and led him to a small office. She opened a drawer and pulled out a worn-out shoebox. Inside were several letters, some folded neatly, others a little crumpled. She handed the box to Keanu. He took out the first letter, carefully unfolding it. The handwriting was small and shaky, but full of heart. He began to read. "Dear Keanu Reeves, I hope one day I get to meet you. I love your movies, but I love how kind you are even more. You always play heroes, and I think you are a hero in real life too. Sometimes, when I'm sad, I pretend I'm in one of your movies, fighting bad guys and saving the day. It makes me feel strong. Thank you for being my hero. Your biggest fan, Daniel." Keanu felt his eyes sting. He blinked back tears, his fingers tightening around the paper. He read another letter. "Dear Keanu, I'm going to my new home soon. I'm so excited, but I will miss my friends here. I wish you could come visit us one day. If you ever do, tell them I love them. And don't forget to be awesome. Love, Daniel." Keanu let out a shaky breath. He had never met Daniel, yet the boy had looked up to him, had dreamed of meeting him. And now he was gone. Miss Clara touched his arm gently. "He would have been so happy to know you're here now." Keanu swallowed hard and nodded. He looked around the orphanage, at the children playing outside, at the simple but loving home they had. "I want to do something for them," he said firmly. "For Daniel. For all the kids here." Miss Clara's eyes shone with gratitude. That would mean the world to them. Keanu looked back at the photograph one last time. He wasn't sure what he would do yet, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to forget Daniel, and he wasn't going to walk away without making a difference. Keanu Reeves sat quietly, holding Daniel's letters in his hands. The words of the little boy echoed in his mind. "You always play heroes, and I think you are a hero in real life too." Those words touched him deeply. He took a deep breath and looked at Miss Clara. "Tell me more about the orphanage. What do the children need the most?" Miss Clara smiled softly. "Well, we do our best, but it's not easy. We don't always have enough money for good food, school supplies, or warm clothes in the winter. The children dream of having books, toys, and a safe playground. We try to give them love, but there's so much more they deserve." Keanu looked around the room. The walls were filled with children's drawings, but the paint was peeling. The chairs and tables looked old and worn out. Even though the place felt warm and full of love, he could see that it needed help. He stood up, his mind made up. "I want to help," he said. "I don't want to just visit. I want to do something that will last." Miss Clara's eyes widened. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Reeves, but we don't expect anything from you. Just your visit means so much." Keanu smiled gently. "Please call me Keanu. And I want to do this, not because I'm famous, but because it feels right." Just then, a group of children ran into the room, their faces full of excitement. "Mr. Keanu, will you play soccer with us?" a boy with messy hair asked. Keanu laughed. "Of course. But I have to warn you, I'm not very good." The children cheered and pulled him outside. The playground was just an open area with dirt and a few makeshift goalposts made of rocks. But the kids didn't seem to mind. They were happy just to play. Keanu ran around, kicking the ball, laughing as the children chased him. He purposely missed a few shots to make them laugh. When one little girl finally scored a goal, the children jumped and cheered like they had won a championship. As Keanu played, he couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. This is what he loved, Keanu thought. Playing, laughing, dreaming. After the game, the children sat with him in the shade, catching their breath. "Mr. Keanu, do you make real movies?" a little boy asked. Keanu grinned. "I do. But do you know what's better than movies?" "What?" they asked eagerly. "Real life," he said. "And all of you are heroes in your own way. You're strong, kind, and brave, just like in the movies." The children beamed with pride. As the sun started to set, Keanu knew it was time to leave. But he wasn't just going to walk away. Before getting into his car, he turned to Miss Clara. "I'll be back," he said. "And next time, I'm bringing something special." Miss Clara's eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you, Keanu." He gave her a warm smile. Then he looked at the children and waved. "I'll see you soon." As the car drove away, Keanu glanced back at the orphanage. He had come here expecting to spend a nice afternoon with the kids. Instead, he had found something much bigger, a purpose. He pulled out Daniel's last letter and read the words again. "If you ever visit, tell them I love them." Keanu smiled sadly. "Don't worry, Daniel," he whispered. "I will." And with that, he started making plans that would change the orphanage forever. Keanu Reeves couldn't stop thinking about the orphanage. As soon as he got home, he sat down with a notebook and started writing ideas. He didn't just want to donate money. He wanted to do something personal, something that would make a real difference in the children's lives. The next morning, he made some phone calls. He reached out to friends, people who could help. He contacted builders, toy companies, and bookstores. Then he called Ms. Clara. "Hello, Keanu," she said, surprised to hear from him so soon. "Hi, Miss Clara. I have a question. Can I come back in a few weeks? And this time, I want to bring something special." Miss Clara smiled. "Of course, the children would love to see you again." Keanu grinned. "Great. But don't tell them. It's a surprise." Over the next few weeks, a quiet transformation began. Workers arrived at the orphanage, but Miss Clara kept the children inside as much as possible so they wouldn't see what was happening. The kids were curious, but she only smiled and said, "You'll find out soon." Meanwhile, Keanu was preparing something extra special. He remembered how much Daniel had loved movies, so he had an idea. He called one of his film industry friends and arranged something that had never been done before. Finally, the big day arrived. The big reveal. Keanu pulled up in front of the orphanage, but this time, he wasn't alone. Trucks followed behind him, carrying boxes and equipment. As he stepped out of the car, the children ran to greet him. "Mr. Keanu, you came back," one little girl shouted. He laughed and knelt down. "Of course I did. And I brought a surprise." The children's eyes widened with excitement. "What is it?" they asked eagerly. Keanu turned to Miss Clara. "Are they ready?" She smiled. "More than ready." Keanu led the children to the backyard, where a huge curtain covered something big. The kids gasped. The once empty dirt playground was gone. In its place was a brand new play area, complete with swings, slides, and a small soccer field. The walls were painted bright colors with fun pictures of animals and superheroes. "Wow!" the children cried, their eyes lighting up. Keanu grinned. "Do you like it?" The kids didn't even answer. They just ran straight to the swings and slides, laughing and cheering. Keanu watched with a full heart. But he wasn't done yet. "I have one more surprise," he said. He led them inside, where another curtain covered something. The children and staff gathered around. Keanu pulled the curtain away, revealing a small movie room. There was a projector, soft chairs, and shelves filled with books and DVDs of classic family movies. "This is for all of you," Keanu said. "A place where you can watch movies, read, and dream." The children clapped and cheered, and Miss Clara wiped a tear from her eye. "There's one more thing," Keanu added. He held up a framed picture of Daniel, the same one that had been on the wall before. But now, it had a new message written underneath. "For Daniel, whose dreams will live on forever." The children grew quiet for a moment. Then one of them whispered, "Daniel would have loved this." Keanu nodded. Yes, he would have. As the sun set, the children watched their first movie in their new room. Keanu sat with them, laughing, smiling, and feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: pure happiness. That night, as he drove home, he looked up at the sky. "Thank you, Daniel," he whispered. "You brought me here." And he knew this was only the beginning. Keanu Reeves sat among the children, watching their faces light up as the movie played on the big screen. Their laughter, their excitement. It filled the room with warmth. Seeing them so happy made his heart swell. This was more than just a visit. It was a promise, a change, something that would last. After the movie ended, the children clapped, their eyes shining with joy. "Mr. Keanu, can we watch another one?" a little girl asked, her hands clasped together. Keanu chuckled. "Not today, little one. But don't worry, you have plenty of movies now." The children cheered, knowing they could come back any time to enjoy their new movie room. Miss Clara stood beside Keanu, her face full of gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "This means more than you know." Keanu smiled. Seeing them happy is thanks enough. But he wasn't done yet. He had one more surprise. A life-changing announcement. Keanu stood up and clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, everyone. I have something important to say." The children and staff gathered around, curious. "I've been thinking a lot about this place, about all of you," he said, looking around the room. "And I don't want this to be just a one-time visit. I want to help in a bigger way." Miss Clara looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" Keanu took a deep breath. "I've set up a fund to support this orphanage. That means you'll have enough money for better food, new clothes, school supplies, everything you need to make life here better." Gasps filled the room. Some of the children didn't fully understand, but they could tell it was something important. The older ones exchanged shocked glances, and the staff covered their mouths in disbelief. Miss Clara's eyes filled with tears. You're really doing this?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, and not just that. I want to help find families for as many of these kids as possible. No child should grow up without a loving home." The room fell silent for a moment. Then, a little boy with big brown eyes spoke up. "Does this mean I might get a mommy and daddy?" he asked hesitantly. Keanu knelt down to his level and smiled. "That's exactly what it means, buddy." The boy's face lit up with hope. Miss Clara wiped her tears and placed a hand on Keanu's shoulder. "You have no idea what this means to us." Keanu shook his head. "No, I think I do. And it's something I want to do with all my heart. A place of love and dreams." As the night went on, the children played, laughed, and celebrated. They ran to the new playground, flipped through the new books, and talked about the families they dreamed of having one day. Keanu watched them with a full heart. He had spent years playing heroes on screen, but this felt like the most heroic thing he had ever done. Before leaving, he took one last look at Daniel's picture on the wall. He placed his hand on the frame and whispered, "This is for you, kid." As he walked toward his car, one of the little girls ran up to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Keanu," she whispered. "You're our real hero." Keanu smiled, hugging her back. "No, sweetheart, you all are." As he drove away that night, he knew his journey with the orphanage wasn't over. This wasn't just a visit. It was the beginning of something beautiful, something lasting. And in the sky above, a single bright star shined a little brighter. Days passed after Keanu Reeves' visit to the orphanage, but his promise was not forgotten. True to his word, He worked behind the scenes to make sure the children had everything they needed. Soon, the orphanage started receiving new clothes, fresh food, and better school supplies. The children were overjoyed. They wore warm sweaters in the winter, had colorful backpacks for school, and ate delicious meals every day. But Keanu knew the most important thing was still missing: a family for each child. Keanu's next mission. Keanu reached out to adoption agencies, social workers, and even some of his close friends. He wanted to spread the word about the orphanage and help find loving homes for the children. Then he had an idea. What if we make a video? He suggested to Miss Clara during a phone call. Something that shows the world how wonderful these kids are. Miss Clara loved the idea. That could help so much. People will see their smiles, their dreams, their hearts. Keanu quickly arranged everything. A small film crew visited the orphanage, capturing the children's laughter, their artwork, and their stories. Some children spoke about their dreams, to be doctors, teachers, or even actors like Keanu. Others simply said they wished for a mom and dad to tuck them in at night. When the video was finished, Keanu shared it everywhere, on social media, in news interviews, and even with friends in the film industry. He hoped that someone somewhere would see the video and open their hearts to adoption. The first family arrives. Not long after, something amazing happened. A kind couple who had seen the video called the orphanage. They wanted to adopt a little boy named Alex, who had been living there since he was a baby. When Miss Clara told Alex the news, he couldn't believe it. A real family. For me. Yes, sweetheart, Miss Clara said with tears in her eyes. They want to meet you. Keanu flew back to the orphanage just in time to see Alex meet his new parents. The little boy hesitated at first, shy and unsure. But when his new mom knelt down and opened her arms, Alex ran to her, hugging her tightly. Keanu smiled, feeling his heart swell. This was what Daniel had wanted: love, family, and happiness for the children he had left behind. More miracles follow. After Alex's adoption, more families started visiting the orphanage. A young couple adopted 2 sisters so they wouldn't have to be separated. A single father took in a little boy who dreamed of becoming a soccer player. Every week, more children found homes, and with each adoption, the orphanage became a place of hope rather than waiting. One day, a little girl named Emily ran up to Keanu, holding his hand. "Mr. Keanu, will I get a family too?" she asked, her big brown eyes full of hope. Keanu knelt down and held her hands. "I believe you will, sweetheart. And until then, you have a big family here who loves you." Emily hugged him tightly, and Keanu knew that even though the work wasn't done, something beautiful was happening. A new beginning. As the weeks went by, the orphanage transformed. It wasn't just a place for children without parents. It became a place of second chances, of dreams coming true. Keanu kept visiting, not as a celebrity, but as a friend. He sat with the children, played games, read books, and reminded them that they were loved. One evening, as he watched the sunset with the remaining children, he whispered to himself, "Daniel, we did it." And somewhere in the heavens, a little boy's spirit smiled. Weeks passed, and more children from the orphanage found loving families. Every time a child left with their new parents, Keanu Reeves felt a deep happiness in his heart. This was the change he had hoped for. But one little girl still waited. Emily. She was always cheerful, always hopeful. She watched as her friends left with their new families, waving goodbye with a bright smile. But deep inside, she longed for the day when someone would come for her too. One afternoon, she sat beside Keanu under the big tree in the playground. She kicked her feet in the dirt and asked softly, "Mr. Keanu, do you think my family will come soon?" Keanu looked at her gentle brown eyes and smiled. "I believe they will, Emily. The right family is out there, and they will find you." She nodded, but he could see the sadness in her eyes. He wished he could do something more. A special letter. That night, Keanu couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Emily and her unshakable hope. Then he had an idea. He sat at his desk and wrote a heartfelt message about Emily. He described her kindness, her bright smile, and her big dreams. He shared her story and posted it online, asking if there was a family out there who could give this little girl the love she deserved. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people shared the post. Many reached out, wanting to know more about Emily. And then, a miracle happened. A woman named Lisa and her husband, Mark, saw the post. They had been trying to adopt for years, but had never found the right match until they saw Emily's picture. Lisa wiped tears from her eyes as she read about the little girl's kindness and patience. "This is her," she whispered to Mark. "This is our daughter." Without hesitation, they called the orphanage. The moment Emily had been waiting for. A few days later, Miss Clara called Emily into her office. "Emily," she said, smiling, "there's a family who wants to meet you." Emily's eyes widened. "Really?" Miss Clara nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. They're coming today." Emily's heart pounded with excitement. She ran to her room and put on her favorite dress. Then she sat by the window, watching, waiting. Keanu arrived at the orphanage just in time. He sat beside Emily, holding her little hand. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. She nodded, though her hands were shaking. "What if they don't like me?" she whispered. Keanu smiled warmly. "Oh, Emily, they're coming because they like you. They already love you." At that moment, a car pulled up outside. A woman and a man stepped out, looking around nervously. Miss Clara led Emily to the entrance. The little girl's heart raced as she stepped outside. Lisa knelt down with tears in her eyes. "Hi, Emily," she said softly. "We've been waiting for you." Mark smiled warmly. "Would you like to come home with us?" Emily looked up at Keanu, as if asking for permission. He smiled and nodded. Then, without a word, Emily ran into Lisa's arms. Tears rolled down Lisa's cheeks as she hugged the little girl tightly. Mark joined in, wrapping them both in a warm embrace. Keanu felt his eyes sting, but he smiled. This was the moment Emily had been waiting for. A new chapter begins. The entire orphanage gathered to say goodbye. The children hugged Emily, telling her they would miss her. Miss Clara held her close, whispering, "You'll always have a home here, but now you have a forever home, too." Before getting into the car, Emily turned to Keanu and ran to him. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Keanu. You made my wish come true." Keanu hugged her back. "You deserve this, Emily. Be happy, okay?" She nodded and climbed into the car with her new parents. As the car drove away, Keanu watched, his heart full. This wasn't just a happy ending, it was a beautiful beginning. And somewhere in the sky, Daniel's star shined even brighter. Keanu Reeves stood outside the orphanage, watching as Emily's car disappeared down the road. His heart was full, but there was also a bittersweet feeling inside him. She had waited so long for a family, and now she finally had one. Miss Clara stood beside him. "She's going to be so happy," she said softly. Keanu nodded. Yes, she will. Over the past few months, he had seen so many children leave the orphanage with their new families. The once crowded hallways were quieter now. The rooms that had once been filled with children's voices were slowly emptying, one by one. But that wasn't a sad thing. It was beautiful. A visit from an old friend. A few weeks later, Keanu received a letter. It was from Emily. "Dear Mr. Keanu, I love my new home. My mom and dad take me to the park every weekend, and I have my own room with pink walls and a big bed. I even have a puppy. His name is Charlie. Thank you for helping me find my family. I miss you and everyone at the orphanage, but I am very happy. Love, Emily." Keanu smiled as he read the letter. It was proof that everything he had done had made a real difference. Then Miss Clara called him with more news. "Keanu, guess what?" she said excitedly. "Emily and her parents want to visit the orphanage." Keanu's face lit up. "Really?" "Yes, she wants to see her friends and show them that dreams really do come true. Keanu agreed to be there for the special day. An emotional reunion. The day of Emily's visit arrived. The children at the orphanage were buzzing with excitement. They all missed Emily, but they were also happy to see how much her life had changed. When the car pulled up, Emily jumped out, running straight to Keanu. "Mr. Keanu," she shouted, throwing her arms around him. He laughed and hugged her tightly. "Hey, kiddo, you look so happy." "I am happy," she said with a bright smile. "And I want everyone to know that one day they will be happy too." She spent the afternoon playing with her old friends, sharing stories about her new life. She even brought Charlie, her little puppy, and the children took turns petting him. Her parents spoke with Miss Clara and Keanu. "We can never thank you enough," Lisa said. "You changed Emily's life forever." Keanu shook his head. "She changed mine, too." A forever home for the orphanage. As the sun set, Keanu gathered the children and staff for an announcement. "I have something important to tell you all," he said. Everyone listened closely. "I started this journey because of Daniel," he said, looking at the framed picture of the little boy who had once lived here. "And I've realized something. This orphanage will always be special. It should always be a place of love and hope." Ms. Clara nodded. "And it always will be." Keanu smiled. "That's why I've decided to make sure this place is taken care of forever. The orphanage will never close. It will always be here to help children find love, happiness, and family." The staff gasped in surprise. The children cheered. Keanu continued. "And one more thing. Every year, I'll come back to visit, to see how you're all doing. Because no matter where life takes you, you will always be part of my family." Tears filled Miss Clara's eyes. "Keanu, this is incredible. A star that shines forever." That night, as Keanu drove home, he looked up at the sky. He thought of Daniel, of Emily, of all the children whose lives had changed. Somewhere, he knew Daniel was smiling, and in his heart, Keanu made a silent promise to always keep the light of hope shining for every child who needed it, because love, kindness, and family were the greatest gifts of all.